It began like any other autumn morning in Chicago. The air was crisp, the kind that makes you pull your jacket a little tighter. On September 29, 1982, commuters were sipping coffee. Kids were heading to school, and America was just another day away from the weekend. But before the sun had even set, 7 people in the Chicago area would be dead, all seemingly healthy, all struck down in the span of hours, and the cause would terrify the nation. The first call came in from Elk Grove Village. 12-year-old Mary Kellerman had woken up with a runny nose and a sore throat. Her parents gave her 1 capsule of Extra-Strength Tylenol, a brand found in nearly every American household. Minutes later, she collapsed in the bathroom. By the time paramedics arrived, Mary was gone. No signs of trauma, no pre-existing conditions, just sudden, inexplicable death. That same morning, Adam Janus, a 27-year-old postal worker from Arlington Heights, left work early complaining of chest tightness. At home, he took 2 Extra-Strength Tylenol capsules from a freshly opened bottle. Within minutes, he was on the floor, gasping. Doctors fought to save him, but Adam died that afternoon. The tragedy deepened when, in their grief, Adam's family gathered at his home. His younger brother and sister-in-law, suffering from headaches, each took capsules from the same bottle. Both collapsed within minutes. Both died before the day was over. In the space of hours, 3 members of the same family had been wiped out, and they weren't the only ones. By nightfall, 3 more victims, all unrelated, all scattered across the Chicago suburbs, had died in the exact same sudden, mysterious way. The only link between them, Extra-Strength Tylenol. By the time authorities made the connection, panic was already spreading. Tylenol wasn't just medicine, it was America's most trusted painkiller, controlling more than 35% of the over-the-counter analgesic market. If something as familiar and harmless as a capsule in your bathroom cabinet could kill without warning, what else could be turned into a weapon? Investigators quickly learned the truth. Someone had taken bottles of Tylenol off store shelves, opened the capsules, replaced the powder inside with potassium cyanide, one of the deadliest poisons known to man, and then returned the bottles. 2 stores, each tampered capsule contained enough cyanide to kill not just one person, but entire neighborhoods. The killer had counted on one simple fact: no one would suspect their medicine. In 1982, there were no tamper-proof seals, no child-proof packaging, no foil to peel back. A bottle sat on the shelf, you opened it, you trusted it. That trust would end forever. News spread fast. Supermarkets and pharmacies pulled Tylenol from shelves nationwide. Johnson & Johnson, the manufacturer, issued an unprecedented recall, minus 31 million bottles destroyed at a cost of over $100 million. But for Chicago residents, the damage was already done. Stores were empty, hospitals were on high alert, and parents were afraid to give their children so much as a cough drop. Detectives faced a nightmare: no fingerprints, no witnesses, no security cameras. Whoever had done this had blended back into the crowd. The only physical evidence was the poisoned capsules themselves, and even those offered no clear trail. The question loomed over every street corner, every news broadcast, every sleepless night. Who would do something like this, and would they strike again? In living rooms across America, families stared at their medicine cabinets in fear. For decades, the pharmacy aisle had been a place of relief. Now, it was a crime scene. What had happened in Chicago wasn't just a tragedy, it was a violation of something deeper. Trust had been murdered along with the victims. And here's what still haunts investigators to this day: the killer's plan was so simple, so low-tech, that it could be copied by anyone. No elaborate chemicals, no secret labs, just an everyday product, a deadly powder, and the confidence that no one would look twice. In the days ahead, investigators would chase down hundreds of leads, some promising, most dead ends. They'd interview ex-employees, pharmacists, even random customers caught on grainy security photos. But every time they thought they had a suspect, the trail went cold. What Chicago didn't know yet was that this case would change the way America thought about safety, crime, and the products we trust. But first, there would be more fear, more false alarms, and one suspect whose name would echo through the headlines for years to come, even though he was never charged for the murders. This was the day America learned that danger could hide in plain sight, and that the killer you fear most might be the one whose face you'll never see. Chicago was no stranger to crime, but this was different. This was invisible. There were no gunshots, no break-ins, no ransom notes. Just people, healthy, ordinary. People dropping dead without warning. In the first 48 hours after the Tylenol deaths, panic hit like a tidal wave. Hospitals were flooded with calls. "I just took Tylenol. Am I going to die?" One woman asked a nurse in tears. Parents swept through their medicine cabinets, dumping bottles into the trash. Drugstores set up tables for customers to return Tylenol, the bottles piled high like mountains of distrust. Johnson & Johnson's headquarters in New Brunswick, New Jersey, turned into a war room. Conference calls buzzed with urgency. CEO James Burke made a decision that shocked the corporate world. Pull every single Tylenol product from every shelf in America, no matter the cost. 31 million bottles, worth over $100 million, gone. In the short term, it looked like corporate suicide, but in the long run, it would be remembered as one of the boldest PR moves in history. Meanwhile, the Cook County Medical Examiner's office worked around the clock. Dr. Edmund Donahue, who held up one of the tainted capsules in front of reporters. "This is a cyanide capsule," he said gravely. "If you took this, you would be dead before you hit the floor. Each pill contained enough poison to kill thousands. Whoever did this hadn't just wanted to kill, they wanted to send a message." Detectives scoured store receipts, tracing the tainted bottles back to a handful of pharmacies and supermarkets in the Chicago area. But the locations were random, no clear pattern, no single distributor. That meant the killer had moved around, hitting different stores, and he hadn't bought the bottles. He'd simply taken them off the shelf, doctored them, and put them back. The FBI joined the hunt, setting up a command center with hundreds of agents and analysts. They tested thousands of bottles from across the country. Most were clean, but every time a contaminated one turned up, the terror surged again. Chicago's grocery aisles became ghost towns. Some customers began inspecting every product in their carts, looking for tiny signs of tampering. Others refused to buy anything that came in a bottle at all. Then, a strange letter arrived at Johnson & Johnson. It was addressed to Tylenol Company and postmarked from Chicago. The writer claimed to be the killer and demanded $1 million to stop the killings. The FBI traced the letter to a man named James William Lewis, living in New York. When agents raided his apartment, they found handwriting samples matching the letter, along with a detailed plan for how someone could poison capsules. It seemed like the break they needed. But there was one problem. Lewis had an airtight alibi. He wasn't in Chicago during the murders. He admitted to sending the letter, but claimed it was a scam to extort money, not an admission of guilt. The FBI charged him with extortion. He was convicted and sentenced to 20 years in prison, but the murders, he wasn't charged. The public didn't care about legal technicalities. To them, Lewis became the face of evil. News broadcasts replayed his mugshot night after night. And yet, even with him behind bars, the question still hung in the air. If Lewis wasn't the killer, then who was? Detectives chased every possibility. A disgruntled ex-employee of Johnson & Johnson, a mentally unstable local resident. Even the theory that this was a test run for a larger, coordinated attack. But each lead crumbled under scrutiny. No fingerprints on the bottles. No surveillance cameras in stores. No witnesses seeing someone tamper with the shelves. The killer had vanished as easily as he'd appeared. By mid-October, the official death toll was 7, but the damage went far beyond those victims. Tylenol sales plummeted 90%. Doctors prescribed alternatives. America's love affair with over-the-counter capsules was over. And yet, in a strange twist, Johnson & Johnson's public image rebounded, even improved because of their decisive recall and new safety packaging. For Chicagoans, though, life didn't snap back to normal. Every headache, every fever, came with a moment of hesitation. Is it safe to take something? People who had trusted brands their whole lives now studied every seal, every label. And in the shadow of that fear, the killer's identity faded into myth. Forensic evidence was thin. Witness memories were foggy. Time was on the murderer's side, but the nightmare wasn't over. In the years ahead, there would be new scares, new copycats, and chilling new evidence suggesting the original Tylenol killer might have struck again. And the most disturbing theory of all, that the murderer was someone hiding in plain sight. Someone the victims might have passed on the street. Someone who could still, even now, be walking free. By early 1983, America was trying to move on. Supermarkets had started stocking Tylenol again, now in new triple-sealed bottles. Johnson & Johnson was in full recovery mode, running national ads that declared, "Safety you can trust." But the fear never really went away. It just went quiet. And then, the copycats came. January 1986, Auburn, Washington. A young woman named Diane Ellsroth takes an extra-strength Tylenol for a headache. Hours later, she's dead. Cyanide again? The packaging is new. The seal's intact until you look closer. Someone had broken in so cleanly that the tampering was invisible. The panic roared back overnight. The FDA sent inspectors to every major city. Police raided homes looking for cyanide stocks. Even the FBI admitted, off the record, that the Tylenol killer might not be one man, but an idea. An idea that had escaped the bottle and spread to anyone twisted enough to imitate it. News anchors, almost a decade after the original murders, spoke the killer's name like an urban legend. Late-night talk shows joked nervously about checking your medicine twice. But in Chicago, detectives were still working the original 1982 case, quietly, methodically, like archaeologists of a nightmare. One lead in particular kept resurfacing. It was a local man, known for odd behavior, obsessed with cyanide chemistry, and with a history of disputes against Johnson & Johnson. On paper, he fit the profile. But again, no direct evidence. Every time police closed in, the trail evaporated. It was as if the case itself refused to be solved. And then there was the envelope. In 2009, decades after the murders, a retired investigator going through old evidence found a sealed envelope marked "Do not open without authorization." Inside was a scrap of paper, a store log from a Jewel supermarket in suburban Chicago. Handwritten notes listed employees on duty the day a tainted bottle was stocked. One name was underlined twice. The name belonged to a man still living in Illinois. He'd never been interviewed, never appeared in police reports, yet, disturbingly, his address was just blocks away from multiple tampered locations in '82. When reporters tried to contact him years later, he refused to comment. As these forgotten details resurfaced, the public's fascination returned. Podcasts, YouTube documentaries, even Reddit threads began dissecting every possible suspect. Amateur sleuths mapped out store locations, compared them to bus routes, searched old phone books for connections, and somewhere in the middle of all this noise, another unsettling truth began to take shape. The Tylenol murders had never really stopped influencing America. After 1982, the way you buy medicine, food, and drinks changed forever. Tampered evident, seals became law. Consumer packaging turned into a fortress. The crime scene wasn't just in Chicago anymore. It was in every grocery aisle in the country. And yet, for all those changes, the person who started it all had never been caught. FBI agents who had worked the case in the '80s admitted their frustration in interviews. "We knew he was smart," one said. "We knew he was patient. And we knew he wasn't afraid of waiting decades. Whoever he was always 2 steps ahead." But as the investigation dragged on, one suspect kept finding his way back into the file boxes. James William Lewis. Yes, the same man arrested for the extortion letter. Officially, he had an alibi. But privately, some investigators whispered that his alibi was thinner than the public knew. They found old neighbors who remembered him talking about cyanide long before the murders. A former employer claimed he'd once threatened to make people drop dead in a dispute. Still, the lack of physical evidence was fatal to the case. No fingerprints, no DNA, no security footage. The Tylenol killer had left nothing behind. But feared out by the late 2010s, the case file was as thick as a phone book. Thousands of pages of dead ends. The FBI's official stance was that the murders were inactive, but unsolved. But then, in 2023, a breakthrough. A newly developed forensic technique, using microscopic residue analysis, revealed something on one of the recovered Tylenol bottles, a trace contaminant in the capsule powder that wasn't cyanide, but a chemical byproduct from a specific brand of industrial cleaning agent. That brand was only sold to a handful of businesses in the Chicago area in the early '80s. Investigators quietly reopened interviews with surviving employees from those businesses. And one name appeared again. It was the same underlined name from that 1982 store log. If this was a coincidence, it was the cruelest one in the case's history. If it wasn't, then, after more than 40 years, the Tylenol killer's shadow had just taken shape. The year is 2023. 41 years have passed since 7 people in Chicago took Tylenol and never woke up. The city has changed. The skyline is taller. The neighborhoods look different. But for the families of the victims, the shadow of 1982 has never lifted. And now, the case that was once cold is breathing again. The underlined name from that old store log, the one quietly sitting in a sealed envelope for decades, has been linked to a business that used a rare industrial cleaning agent, a contaminant, from that exact brand, was found inside one of the poisoned Tylenol capsules. This is not coincidence. In October 2023, FBI agents arrive at a modest home in suburban Illinois. The man is in his late 70s now, living quietly, a good neighbor to those who know him, but to the agents, he is more than just an old man. He is the prime suspect in one of America's most infamous unsolved crimes. Inside his garage, they find shelves lined with jars, bottles, and powders. Many are ordinary, but some are chillingly familiar. In a locked cabinet, they discover an old box of capsules, unmarked, dusty, and decades old. The contents are sent to Quantico. When the lab results come back, the room falls silent. The capsules contain traces of cyanide, identical in chemical signature to the poison found in 1982. The probability of this match being random? Less than 1 in a billion, but here's the problem. The evidence is still circumstantial. There's no direct link placing these capsules into the store shelves in '82. The man denies everything, claims the capsules are for pest control experiments from years ago. His lawyer argues that the samples could have been planted. Federal prosecutors face a decision: take the case to trial with the risk of losing, or leave the truth buried forever. Meanwhile, the media gets wind of the raid. Headlines scream, "Tylenol killer finally found." News vans swarm the quiet street. The suspect's face becomes the subject of documentaries, podcasts, and heated online debates. For the families, it's a storm they've weathered before. Hope, then doubt, then silence. One victim's sister says in an interview, "Been here before. We've heard the whispers. Until I see him in handcuffs, it's just another false dawn. Then, in December 2023, an unexpected twist. A handwritten diary is found among the suspect's belongings. Most of it is mundane: grocery lists, car repairs, weather notes. But one entry, dated September 28, 1982, chills investigators to the bone. Greater than perfect batch, complete. Shelves tomorrow. It's still not a confession. The defense could argue it means anything, but for the lead detective, it's as close to hearing the killer's voice as they've ever come, and yet, no charges are filed. Why? Because in America, the standard is proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Without it, even the most likely suspect walks free. The case remains officially unsolved. In the final days of 2023, a press conference is held. The FBI announces the reopening of the Tylenol investigation, citing new forensic developments and persons of interest. But they stop short of naming anyone. The podium is crowded with microphones. Behind it, a poster shows the faces of the 7 original victims. The youngest was just 12 years old. The agent closes with a warning: greater than if you think time has buried this crime, think again. We are still watching. We are still listening, and we will not stop. The feed cuts somewhere, perhaps in a quiet suburban home, or maybe far away. The person who knows the full truth about the Tylenol murders watches too. Maybe it's the suspect from the store log. Maybe it's someone no one ever suspected, and maybe, just maybe, the real killer has been sitting across from us in plain sight for 4 decades, smiling politely. Their secret sealed tighter than any medicine bottle. The Tylenol murders remain unsolved, but the fear that never left.